Hi, John.
Long time no talk to.
Absolutely. It's twice in one day, and we don't speak for whatever the period of time is.
we should talk more frequently. We should almost do it on a weekly basis. You know what? I'm telling you, it was a very concise and short discussion today. But I think we're everybody's starting to, we're hitting on full cylinders with understanding something has to give, something has to change. Yeah. And especially when it comes to, but not just the public sector, but private sector.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, as you know, I've been doing research in this area for quite a number of years. And it's interesting the things that continue to come out. And you know, as we were talking earlier, one of the things that sort of continues to sort of, I'll call it vex me in a way, is that you've got many solution providers who, how can I put it, have gone away and thought about the technicalities, but then haven't thought about, so how are we going to get the engagement? How are we going to make this attractive, easy, accessible, you know, timely, all those kind of things that we know we need to have as part and parcel of a, how can I put it, a compelling proposition for somebody. But I can't help feeling that, I mean, it's a bit like one of the posts that you put out recently, which was sort of, you know, we've got all these wonderful maps that says, well, you know, this piece of software fits in this segment and da 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 da, and you go, yeah, that's the two-dimensional piece, because actually what I'm really interested in then is what sits below that. And the things that I mean, as I said, when we did the sort of the, I did a quick dive on Simple as an example, you know, there's nothing about who's behind the company, what their ethos is, you know, what their approach is, why they are different. I mean, all even the discussions that we've had today about sort of, you know, the approach that they want to take. If you thought about it from somebody who's doing some due diligence and doing some investigative work on, so who's out there, who's doing what, all of that is missing. And for me, that is quite sad in a way that we don't have that. And you almost need the sort of the, how can I put it, the narrative that helps you understand that. And it's sadly missing, and it does worry me. It's interesting when I've spoken to a number of software companies who should obviously remain nameless, and they've gone, well, you know, we've got lots of programmers and developers and da da da. Yeah, but who's your procurement expert? Oh, we haven't got any of those. And you go,
You just hit the nail on the head. Listen, and what I liked is when you told me, you know, behavioral scientists, behavioral understanding these things. You know, you made me think of instantly because they're all taking the equation-based approach. We'll solve the problem. Wait, you know what? It was ERP, too cumbersome. Oh, now it's SaaS, it'll be easy. Wait a second, we're not getting the same traction. Now Gartner reports that 85% of AI initiatives are failing. And give you an idea, when I went back, the software is the last one. With the D&D, they actually, and you know, this is where it comes in difficult because you've got to be able to say no to a client when you know it's not going to work. And how many people will walk away from a sale? And we'll win it first and worry about making it work later. And I remember they came to me and they said, well, we've got a problem, 51% next day delivery, all this stuff, our pricing's out of whack. We need a software package, automate us. And I stood back and I said, well, wait a second, what are we automating? I said, let's look at your entire operation, including the stakeholders outside of your department. And it turns out, and this is the dynamics, is that the service department, the technicians, were incentivized by the number of service calls they could do in a day. And ultimately what happened is that they did have a computer system and automation, a sort of loosey-goosey policy saying, well, at the end of each call, order the part. But they said, we don't have time. We're traveling all over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to sandbag all of these until 4 o'clock. So the procurement department didn't see these things until 4 o'clock. And then it was like a big scramble down the funnel. Another area I looked at was what was the time of day impact on orders, given the type of products they were buying. And it turned out at 9 in the morning, they were $100. By 3 o'clock, they were as high as $1,000 because the market progressively shrunk. And then the third area is where's the sourcing location? 90% of what they were sourcing were coming from the US into Canada, and there was no advanced customs clearance. So I look at it, this is what I'm saying. So if we speed you up at the 4 o'clock period, it's not going to really have an impact. No, because you're not considering the impact. And so we looked at what's the odds of their changing their behavior and incentives, not necessarily. How do we deal with that? How do we understand the clearance at the border? How do we understand to bring on more suppliers who are more diversified across the range and who aren't going to up their prices now that the gig is up? And that's what ultimately led to the 51% next day delivery to 97% next day delivery. That led to the price or the cost decrease consistently. That led to go from 23 panicked people down to 3 managing the process. So your point is right. The functionality is not, or the solution is not in the equation of the technology, but what you do to take that work. And no one wants to, and by the way, this isn't just the provider side. I look at, I wrote an article about Gartner's, you know, the top practitioners. And I did the heading, are you choosing your customers wisely, provider? Like, are you going in there? Because I mean, you can have the greatest technology in the world, but if your provider is just throw tech at it, throw tech at it, throw tech at it, program it, whatever else, IT, you're going to keep having the same mistakes consistently. So it's a breakdown, I think, in providers not having the, and you see now this extends further because a lot of providers are under the gun, VC funding, stock prices to worry about. I remember talking with somebody from Oracle, a top sales guy. He said, you know, you're only judged by your last quarter. And he said this one sales rep was hitting all his numbers for, let's say, 10, 12 consecutive quarters, missed 2, they fired him. So what does that do? You know, so there's all these factors you have to take into consideration. You can't automate that. You've got to understand it and then figure out how to leverage what you can change and incorporate that, and then say, I need this kind of technology.
And I think this whole sort of like, I mean, again, you will know as well as I do that you know, AI and, you know, machine learning and all that sort of thing is based upon stuff we've already done. So guess what? If we've already done, to excuse my French, a pile of crap, and we just scrape that up and regurgitate it, guess what you get? So that there's no critical thinking, there's no intelligence in that, and you just think, why are we doing this? It's quite interesting. Even when you talk to people, uh, in the procurement profession about, the way in which they look at and the decision making process for particularly bringing on board, and you'll probably know more about this than me, bringing on board technology and systems and things like that, and the decision making criteria. Um, and I'm always intrigued by the questions or lack of questions that then come across in terms of the way in which they sort of then think about acquiring technology, and this whole sort of like first principle approach of what's the problem we're trying to solve, rather than we haven't got X, Y, or Z, whatever it happens to be, automation of the toilet doors, whatever it is, I don't care. But
Right.
it's like, because somebody else has got it, we better have it because they're a decent company, and you just think, where's the decision making process gone wrong? Because it's fundamentally flawed, and you do really wonder um, why there is so many. I mean, the thing is that doesn't come out from many of the software providers, and I've said this consistently, which is, in terms of adoption rates, the best that we're still seeing is like 30 to 40% adoption rates. Cotter, in fact, I know John Cotter, actually. I've known him for a very, very long time. But his analysis of that you're only going to get 70% of the companies are not going to get the benefits that they thought they were going to get out of change and all that kind of stuff. And you think, well, the dial has not moved, has it really? So it's back to the Einstein thing, which is about keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, is the definition of stupidity.
Yeah.
And so you have to take a different approach.
That's so true. But now this is where behavioral comes in, and you'll know much better than I. People are more afraid of what they can lose versus what they can gain. So if you look at it, the people, and maybe it's the lemming effect, the people who are saying, oh, well, this is a good company, they're doing it. If we don't do it, we're going to get left behind. We're going to lose. So we're not going to quantify that emotional gut level feeling. What we're going to say is and so subsequently, it's like this lemmings off a cliff. The systems continually fail. The cycle repeats itself. And this AI cycle we're in right now, 10, 15 years from now, there'll be something new and we'll still be going in the same cycle. And that's to your definition of insanity. I mean, because people don't, but you see, to get the gain, and I think this is inherently the problem. And I wrote an article once, does it take a catastrophe to get procurement and everyone collaborating about the I-35 bridge collapse? I don't know if you heard me talk about that.
Yeah,
but I mean,
I have,
Yeah, so I mean, here you go. The bridge collapse, they got to build it up, key infrastructure, all kinds of factors, open book framework, they come together, and the bridge is built on time and on budget. Now you think, wow, this worked. Why don't we make this the standard practice? Instead, the very next project, they went back to their old way of doing things, RFP, all the old thing. And that bridge wasn't built on time and it was over budget. So why? Why is that in a crisis situation, we do have that capability? I also know that there are what you call pockets of success. I've often talked about the Virginia EVA initiative. But that was a success that endured because it had the right mixture of people spanning decades, and most people are very transient now. So, those are the exceptions. Why can they not be the rule? And I think that goes back to what you're saying is it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's easier to just say, okay, I know I'm going to sell this software into them, this application, whatever it is, and I know it's probably not going to work. But if I don't do it, somebody else will, and I don't want to get fired. On the other side of the coin, it's like, we don't have the time to understand any of this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to go off these brochure type case studies that say how wonderful it is, rather than I'm on a project right now where I'm actually tracking case press releases from a year ago and trying to follow up and see how it goes. And I've actually had some organizations say to me, no, don't call our clients. What do you mean? Don't call your clients? I got to call them. We're going to find out how well it's worked. That's great news, isn't it? No, it'll just disrupt their thing like that. And I look at it and you think, you know what? A lot of the stuff that's out there now is infomercials just to get the deal. And everybody forgets after what I call the PR confetti is swept away. Wait a second, how did that deal work out? So I'm following a couple of press releases and maintaining due diligence. I'm not going to jump on it after 3 months, but I'm going to go on a yearly basis and say, okay, how did it go?
How's it working?
What was the result?
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll get more people cooperating than are stepping forward. Again, you'd think you want people to say, oh yeah, let's get in this. Let's show what we've done.
Yeah. But I think the thing is though, John, is that it goes back to what you were saying earlier about sort of the whole sort of, the loss aversion piece. And there is lots of research on that from a behavioral science point of view, going back to Kahneman and Tversky, who originated the prospect theory back in 1981, I think it was. But if you start to then think about some other things, it's a thing, this may be a new one to you, called the Dunning-Kruger effect. So this is where you've got senior decision makers or decision makers in an organization who actually believe they know more about a detailed subject than they actually do. Now, of course, the risk with that is, and it goes back to the Herbert Simon stuff of bounded rationality, which is you don't have enough skills and expertise to truly make the optimal decision. So therefore, calling out and going, hang on a minute, I've not experienced this before, or I've not seen this before, or actually I don't understand this. And the words in a sense of I don't understand this is often seen as quite career limiting. Now I can say this now because I'm old and grey and gnarly, and I can probably get away with it. So saying to people, just treat me like an idiot because I want to understand how the hell this thing works. How does it all stitch together? Don't give me any bullshit. Just tell me the way this thing works. What is the person going to see? What does it connect with? What does it actually do? Back to the original question, what problem does it fix for me? All those kind of things. And, what, even the questions like, so what are the unintended consequences could possibly be? There is a thing called a pre-mortem. So rather than a post-mortem, you carry out a pre-mortem. So you carry out a pre-mortem on the basis of saying, what could possibly go wrong here? So you carry out a pre-mortem on something, big investment. Some of these investments are millions and millions and millions. You know that as well as I do. And that's just purely the cost, if you like, in a sense of the software, the consultant teams that come in, the developers, the software itself, all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't count the cost of, I'll call it, the impact on the organization, because you can't totally quantify that. Or indeed the fact then that, if it doesn't quite deliver at the rate it says it was going to deliver, or the benefits it was going to deliver, and you can't quantify all of those things. So the problem that you've got is you've got this sort of impact factor that if you had the benefit of going in and doing what I call a pre-mortem, which is, let's go around and find out all the lessons learned, talk to people with all their war stories, microphone switched off, what went wrong, why did it go wrong, what would you do with the benefit of hindsight, what would you do differently, what did you think it was going to do versus what it actually did, all that kind of stuff. And you assembled that in a way that said, instead of your sort of, your sort of confetti PR event sort of thing, you do the sort of we're standing at the side of the grave and we're trying to work out what the hell went wrong, because this died way too early. So let's understand what was the cause of death. So it's about establishing the things that could possibly go wrong. So you have the sort of, in a sense, the the gloom cap in a sense on to begin with, which is what can go wrong, because you understand that first before you then start to go, so what are the mitigating factors that we then need to ensure we've got in place before we kick the ball off, before we even go, we're going to do this. And we can then very clearly articulate, this is the problem that it's solving. This is how we're going to motivate the people, because the classic sort of stuff you and I know, which is, as soon as somebody says we're going to put we're going to do a digital transformation, we're going to put this new system in, and it's going to cover all these areas, first thing everybody does is, shit, my job's at risk. What am I going to do next? All that kind of stuff ripples through the organization. And of course, nobody talks about some of those real human factors early enough, or even has the conversation with people to say, we recognize we've got to reskill some people, we've got to redeploy people. I mean, the classic things that sometimes you hear as well, which is, well, it's to free up more time to do these more value adding things. And you go, well, yeah, that's great. So do your current people have the skills to do those value adding things in the first place? Or are you trying to put a round peg in a square hole? Because actually they may not even want to do that, because they may be really, really happy just coming in, turning up, cranking the handle, going home, because that's all they want. They don't want anything more than that. So actually shifting their world for them is not really what they want. It's a bit like coming along and saying, we're going to offer you a really good price for your house, and we're going to tow it onto this park over here somewhere. I'm going to put it with loads of others. You okay with that? And it's a bit like going, well, no, because I've grown up on this street and I know all these people and I know the route to the shops and all that kind of stuff. I don't want that. Thanks very much. Change aversion back to the lost bit is hugely, hugely important. And we just don't seem to.
What's funny is when you use the word pre-mortem, it's actually what Virginia did, because they said, and they said this is how they avoided the risk of it becoming a software initiative. And they said, and they also, and it was funny with regards to that, because they were using Ariba at the time. This was in the early 2000s. And the program's still going wrong, and they've changed providers consistently. Ariba said, well, can you put in a good word about us? And he said, I've got to ask you this. I said, well, let me ask you this question. If it wasn't Ariba, would you still get the same results with someone else? And he said, absolutely, because we did the pre-mortem, which you're talking about. I didn't call it pre-mortem. I think that's a great term, is we look and recognize the strengths and the weaknesses in our infrastructure, different departments, different objectives and incentives. So that was there. Now, on the other side of that, the I-35 bridge example is a post-mortem, forced post-mortem, because the bridge has already collapsed. So you got to figure out how to fix it. But in both modes, they were in problem solving in both situations. And then everything else outside of foresight, innovative thinking, and a crisis, everything else falls into the middle of. And this goes to your other point. I had breakfast with Duncan Jones once when I was speaking in a conference at Washington. And he said, before he came into the into the analyst business, he said he used to implement systems for a company. And there was this one fellow there who he said, I've got great news for you. And I'm paraphrasing, I got great news for you. See that big stack of files on your desk? Once this system goes in, those files are going to be gone. The guy resisted the digital or the transformation, saying, that big stack of files on my desk every day means I have a job. And that was one of the most powerful stories Duncan shared with me, because those are the elements. I say it's this void of neutrality, and just keep following the buzz. And then there's the crisis must do, post-mortem, and then there's what you talked about, is the pre-mortem. Why don't we look into this and say, where are the problems? Because as soon as you turn it over to the provider and abdicate that responsibility, and the provider has no way of knowing how your operation works, generally speaking. As soon as you turn it over to them, it's like giving the car keys to a 16-year-old who doesn't have a driver's license. It's like, here you go. That's why it ends up like that. And this is, but that pre-mortem thing, that I think is ideal. Listen, I've got to run. I love talking with you. Can I share this video?
Yeah.
This is a heart to heart. I'm so sick and tired of the prefabricated. Okay, here's the script. Read the videos, and you watch. And a lot of the webinars that I'm getting feedback on from people is that, well, they have their rehearsals, then they do this, and the questions are called in advance. See, that's why when I do a webinar, I like to have no advance, driving to make sure everything's hooked up, but it's spontaneous. Yep. Don't give me something where we're coming towards driving the audience to a predetermined conclusion. Let's open up discussion and get involved with that. And I think that's what's important, and that's what we're doing here. So.
No, it's interesting. I mean, I go to conferences like you and things like that, and for me, the big takeaways is always the authenticity bit that I get out of stuff, not the fabricated stuff, because you know what, that's not really going to help me a lot, because it's manufactured, and I'm not a big fan of that. But I said, I think the authenticity is so important, and I think there is a fear of talking about the authentic sort of experiential stuff. And I'm not saying it happens in all cases, because clearly it doesn't. But, I think it happens too many times to be an issue that we have to address. We have to fix it.
Yeah, and you have to ask the tough questions. But the responsibility begins with the practitioner, not the provider.
Yeah.
Who is your company? Who's behind there? And don't give me the glossies. I'm going to do my own digging. And I mean, there was one time with a provider I was working with, and I said, well, I'm going to call the past CEO of the company and call the supply your current client customers and see what people have to say, because I need a balance. It's not that we want to do an expose, but I need a balance of the truth. I need objectives, because I'm only getting it this way. And you'd be surprised how many companies are afraid of doing that.
Oh yeah, hugely. And these are not small companies. These are not small companies either that will do that.
No.
And it happens time and time again. On a separate subject, and we did talk about it before, but I'm doing some research on in fact, two areas, one of which is behavioral procurement around digital systems. So I'm going to ping you some stuff shortly, because I'd like to turn the camera back on you to do an interview on you about the use of procurement systems. And the second one, which we corresponded on probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, was on cognitive diversity.
Yes.
I'm ready to launch a survey, but I know that you have a way bigger network and influence than I'll ever have. So that's all fine and dandy. But I'd like to shamelessly sort of ask you to use that to try and get some responses to this survey. Is that okay? I'll send you a copy of the survey before it goes out, and I'll tell you when the launch is going to happen. It's probably 7 to 10 days from now, but I want to get it in before the summer.
Yeah.
And I want to try and get, a few hundred responses, which I'm hoping to get. If we can get 400 or 500 responses, that will help me massively in terms of the white paper that I'm writing at the moment. So I'm writing it from the point of view of, so what can we do differently to think about how we embrace cognitive diversity, rather than the usual stuff that we talk about. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but if we talk about sort of what I call, the classic sort of, EDI sort of thing, in a sense, which is more around sort of the the race and the orientation of people and stuff like that. There's another bigger dimension, I believe, that is the cognitive diversity piece. But I'll share some stuff with you, and confidentially, that can't then be released because it'll come out into the white paper. But I will give you advanced sight of the white paper, and obviously give you the necessary acknowledgements in that for helping with the surveys and stuff, if that's okay.
I think that's a very worthy, absolute. Count on my support, and I'll reach out to my networks and their networks, and we'll try to get you that 300, 400 responses.
Fantastic. All right, John, I'll leave you in peace. I'll let you go for the rest of your day.
Have a great day. Bye.
All right, we'll see you sometime in the future. Take care.
Bye.
See ya.